everyone, this is Julie and welcome to my SOFHAB review series. Today I'm covering the original The Crow movie, and joining me is none other than Rascal Entertainment.
Hello.
Now this movie recently got a remake, which failed miserably, and it should have. So we need to talk about what made the original movie so fantastic, as it's one of my favorites. But
before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click notification bell updates on SOFHAB reviews and many more videos.
Yes, thank you for joining us, subscribing, sharing our videos on all three of our channels. We appreciate you so much. Our specials.
Yeah.
So I asked Rascal to watch this movie because The Crow definitely is one of my favorites. I never expected to be. Originally, I was a fan of Brandon Lee, and so I ended up wanting to see this movie because of him. Mm-hmm. And didn't know how the movie was going to be when I watched it.
Right.
And like myself and critics and reviewers, we were just, there's no other way. Everyone was blown away by his performance. They were blown away by the movie. And what most people don't realize is that this movie is actually a superhero film based on a comic of the same name.
Yes.
It came out in 1989. It was written by James O'Barr. So this isn't just some random movie that was put out. It was based on a comic, and he was considered a superhero.
Right.
And no one expected it to be translated to the screen so well. It's dark, it's gothic,
of course, yeah.
And it's not a happy story, and unfortunately there's not a happy ending for the main character. This movie, it looks like it was done as a one shot, unlike the movies now where they set it up so that he can keep doing sequels. Right. And that was even before the tragedy that happened to Lee during the filming that we'll get into a little bit later.
Right. And it really piqued our interest in rewatching it is that it was also filmed really differently. The story was really different for the time it was out. This was like one of those harder hitting comics that people really liked at the time, like Watchmen and others, where they didn't have the typical fancy superhero capes and all that. They try to take a realistic approach to superheroes or someone who became one, not out of an accident or some greater good. It was just really of vengeance. And a lot of people like the idea when they strip away what makes a superhero, just turn them into something else. The difference is they didn't have, in this version of The Crow, just mindless slaughter or anything. There was a point behind it. He didn't hurt everybody he walked across, and it was in an area where there was unfortunately a lot of crime happening. It was like a lower level of Gotham.
Yeah. And it's basically based on a character named Eric Draven, who has a raven that is his familiar, I guess you could say. And he's a rock musician who's resurrected from the dead to seek vengeance against the gang that murdered he and his fiancée the night before they were supposed to have their wedding. Now, what I remember telling Rascal is that this movie works for two reasons, and the character works for two reasons. One, as you mentioned, the part of New York is supposed to be. And in this area, there is no justice. Crime is just still rampant. And the second thing is, this is a year later after the murders occurred.
Yeah.
And these guys are still on the street doing the same type of crimes, hurting and murdering other people, crime lords, and nobody has brought them to justice.
Right.
So that is really the reason this movie comes about, because there is a lore that for one night, that the person gets to be resurrected and to get vengeance.
Right.
And that's mainly the reason why the movie exists.
Right.
The way it's written, because they're still doing the same thing. They're still hurting other people and no one's done anything. And the only police officer who cares and was still trying to investigate and got in trouble is a character played by Ernie Hudson, Sergeant Albrecht.
Right.
So this was in the theaters. The movie has a runtime of 102 minutes. It had a budget of $23 million, and it made $94 million, which was fantastic because, as you mentioned, movies like this weren't being made then. It was kind of like an indie, more of an indie movie.
There was something unusual,
And it, to me, is the same level and type of movie as Blade, because movies like Blade weren't being made.
Right.
And Blade was so awesome, so fantastic. We had seen nothing like it. And Wesley Snipes was fantastic. this was the same caliber of acting and the type of movie as Blade.
Right.
And unfortunately, because of what happened to Lee during production, it never got where it should have been or it would have gotten.
Right.
Unfortunately, there was a prop gun that had a live round in it, and he was shot in the stomach during filming.
Mm-hmm.
At first, they thought he was playing and he just didn't get up. And then they didn't realize something was wrong to him until someone walked over. He was breathing erratically. His breathing was slowing. Within 3 minutes, this man was dead. Mm. And the hospital, for 6 hours, they did surgery on him, trying not to lose him. And unfortunately, he lost his life. But he had a heck of a career ahead of him.
Right.
If he had lived, because this is his most famous role. He'd done other movies before, but this one here, this was a standout. And this definitely would have been the beginning of another superhero franchise.
Right.
If he had lived.
Right. And another reason a lot of people are going back to this movie, and it was pretty well known for people who watched the movie and came out and still hold in high regard. And they did have some sequels, of course, with different people, but they don't talk about them. When they had announced the remake, people were like, why are you remaking this? It should have been a movie that was left alone. You didn't expect a remake all these years later, and you really didn't need it. Some movies don't need it. And then the movie came out, both the trailer and the film itself, people could see it was an entirely different feel. They pretty much flipped the script of what happened in this film, and it was the opposite. They really, despite him being a rocker and all the things that happened in that town, in that area of town, the two were not really bad people. They were actually kind. They cared about each other. They loved each other. They actually were nice to their fans. They just played him.
Care of a girl in the building who her mom was an addict and running the streets, and they actually babysat her and took care of her. Right.
So when these things happened to them and he came back, you saw why the personality changed because of anger and vengeance. But the remake had it where they were the ones that flipped the script. They're kind of criminals. They're on substances. They're doing very weird tripping out things and just on every narcotic you can think of and just living their high life. But they still love each other, so it's okay. No. So when he is taking on this version, he comes back temporarily, but it's this time to help bring back the fiance and go through this purgatory type thing and bring justice so she can come back and live a life even if he's got to sacrifice. And the whole thing ends up being him just kind of, anybody with a weapon and looked like it was an enemy, he just out. It was just constant, like, just wipe out everybody in this district and that will make justice, that will clear the crime. They actually painted such a horrible picture that people were furious when the movie came out and the trailer came out.
I was interested, saying maybe they'll do something good with it. I saw the trailer. It's like, no way in heck I will ever watch this movie. It's a disgrace. It's an insult. Now, never read the comics, full disclosure. And this movie, the original, the 94 that we're reviewing, Lee had finished filming most of his scenes, and it was completed through script rewrites, a stunt double for some of the faraway scenes, and digital effects. And Paramount didn't expect it to do well because they opted out of the distribution rights.
Really?
And Miramax picked it up. It's like, ha ha, well, good for you. You got what you deserve because it has a following.
Yeah.
This movie not only got accolades, but so did the performers, the actors for their performances. And everyone was just really bummed that you would never get to see Brandon Lee in any other movies or to pick up this character. They just said it was haunting. The performance was haunting. Mm-hmm. The characters, everyone was just on point when you see it. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're watching a movie and going, hey, I'm watching a movie and these people are performing well. It's done so well that all these people seem to be real and relevant and people that you might read about and see on the news. Right. It doesn't seem like it's even being filmed. It was just magic in terms of all the things that came together.
Yeah. In
order to get this performed. The ratings for it were 10 out of 10s all across the board for everything except for Rotten Tomatoes. They gave it an 87%. Who gives a crap what they believe?
Oh, no, you didn't.
But they did say, filled with style and dark lurid energy, The Crow is an action-packed visual feast that also has a soul in the performance of the late Brandon Lee. So they did not criticize it.
Right.
I guess they just thought elements could be better.
Right.
So let's talk about the cast quickly.
Okay.
As I mentioned over and over, Brandon Lee is Eric Draven in The Crow. And I'm going to say it, he was hot. He had been trained by his dad since he was 2 years of age. If you're not familiar, his dad was Bruce Lee, the legendary Bruce Lee.
Yes.
This guy was so hot that even when he put on makeup looking like the Joker, he was hot through the makeup. And the thing is, you knew that, but you weren't focused on that watching the performance. It was just something you realized.
Yeah.
Exactly. You had Rochelle Davis as Sarah, Ernie Hudson, as I mentioned, as Sergeant Albrecht. You had Bailing as Micah. Most of these are villains. Sophia Sheenas as Shirley Webster. Darla was the mom, Anna Levine. And Rochelle Davis, I think that's the one who played the little girl. You also had David Patrick, Kelly, and Bailing is pretty well known. Tony Todd, John Polito. And you had some people that actually were in this film that weren't big at the time but became big after.
Right.
And the person who did the stunt double was Chad Stahelski for several scenes. So it performed well. If he had lived, it would have done even better than it performed.
Yes.
And it is available to purchase. I don't know if it's on any streaming service.
We saw it on Pluto TV, but by the time you're seeing this, it may be different, so you might want to check everything.
Right. Now, The Crow's mentioned in Empire's 2008 list of the 500 greatest movies of all time. It ranked at number 468, and as I mentioned, it's a cult classic now. The soundtrack, I gotta mention, was fantastic. Every song fit. There wasn't anything you were listening to and going, why did they put this? This didn't work. Why is this here? It was fantastic. It also was nominated for several awards. The Stone Temple Pilots song, Big Empty, won for Best Song at the MTV Movie Awards that year.
Wow.
Now, there were sequels, like City of Angels and Stairway to Heaven and Salvation.
Seriously?
And Wicked Prayer.
Oh, seriously? Okay.
Yes. One was released in 96, 98, 2000, and 2005. All of them have done poorly. None of them have the cult following as the original Crow. Rascal mentioned you had the one that came out this year. I'll never watch it.
And speaking of which, there is one more thing I want to point out.
And that's considered a reboot, I think.
Yeah, it pretty much is. When you see what they do in there, it is a reboot that they just kind of take and twist. Now, one thing that I want to mention I thought was pretty odd, and you had mentioned before when we were watching the movie on how they did the stunts and the training and stuff of the physique of the character to make him not only look like the comic but also give this persona where he looks like a whole different person. And you had some naysayers say, oh, well, it wasn't accurate to the comic, so it's not, the original wasn't even that good, so that's how you know they never watched the original. And it's the remake when they show Bill Skarsgård playing the Crow this time. And not only did they barely give him any makeup, one thing I thought was absolutely hilarious is that in preparation for the role, he had the quote-unquote odd request. He had to eat a pound of steak tartare every day in preparation for the role. And I guess they wanted him to look malnourished or something. He was supposed to look unappealing and possible, so he looked like a dead guy coming back. He wasn't supposed to look attractive. So for some reason, I guess they had a problem with part of the legacy of how he looked in the costume, so they wanted this version to be unappealing to look that he just looks like he came from the grave. And it's like, why did that one thing bother these directors? Yeah. Why wasn't the story more important than that?
It's like, who knows, personal issues.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to mention is that this year, May, there was a 4K edition released.
I bet.
And I'm going to get that. I'm going to buy that. I will own that. So if you've seen The Crow, the 1994 movie, let us know in the comments. And if you've seen the new release, let us know what you thought of it. If you haven't, as we mentioned, we saw it on Pluto TV. It may be available on Tubi and some others. We're not sure. And now you know that you can buy it. There are several versions that have been released over the years. So check the year when you're choosing which ones you're going to get, to make sure you're getting one with a great high resolution and probably a Blu-ray. That was released in 2012 as well.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, click the notifications on future SOFHAB reviews, and many more types of videos.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us, Rascal. As always,
you're welcome.
Welcome. And thank you for watching this movie, because I really just wanted to share it with you, like we're sharing with our specials, that this is a movie. If they haven't watched it, they should check it out. And don't watch the new one. And if you have, my
it's like embarrassment, right?
And if you haven't already visited Rascal's channel, be sure to check it out. She's got some great stuff going on this month, as well as continuation of her AU rewrite of the Wish movie.
Yes.
It's awesome. Get over there, check it out. Let her know what you think in her comments.
Yes.
So, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm Rascal.
I'm Julie.
Have a fantastic day.
Continue to be happy, healthy, whole, and also wonderful, my specials. See you next time.